mann som öknar bruk och snuttar.
Hello YouTube, hello world, this is Shauna once again with Disrupt Apps LLC, and we're moving on with our series. And in part 8 we learned about the basics of functions. Looking through the code here, I'm going to go ahead and uncomment this out. We learned about a basic function, how to call or invoke it, and then we learned about the self-invoking functions, and then we learned about arguments and parameters, and we learn about scope and how to pass. We take x, y, and z and pass them into this function parameter down here as arguments, x, y, and z. So we learned about arguments and parameters, passing values. We learned about scope. So that was a really good tutorial. I'm going to go ahead and comment this stuff back out. Come back up here, and we won't be using this code, so I want to go ahead and comment all of this stuff out. And let's make a bunch of space. And in today's tutorial, we are going to go over a thing called a for loop and an introduction to arrays. And for loops are awesome and powerful. I love working with for loops. They're so powerful, you can do a lot with them. It makes code efficient, and especially when you work with arrays. And by this end of this tutorial, you'll see just how powerful the loop and array team, it just kicks butt. So, what is a loop? Well, I was out here on the internet and I just typed in airplane loop GIF, because, you know, a loop is something that goes around and around and around. And oh, what's this one here? Look at that. Loop, loop, loop. Boink. That meme's probably, that meme was so old it was built with the pyramids. But anyways, so a loop is something that goes around and around. So let's go ahead and get into the basics of a for loop. And the syntax of a for loop is going to be, this is the basic syntax, but it won't work. We have to do some more stuff to it. But just whenever you see this for, and you see parentheses and curly braces, that's going to be a for loop. And this is called a statement. When you see something like this, this is a statement. And I'll go into that term, and that's a computer science term that you'll learn about as you go along. But a for loop, it takes some parameters within these parentheses, like we had down here before when we learned about parameters down here. Well, it also needs parameters so it will work. So it takes 3 parameters. In this case, we started off by let I equals 0. And then for in this case, we'll use a semicolon to separate the parameters. And then we'll say I is less than, let's go ahead and say 10, an integer or a number of 10. And then we're going to say I plus plus. Okay, so we haven't gone into the plus plus yet, and this is a good way to get exposure to it with loops. And what I++ does is it adds 1, the number 1, the integer 1 to I. Every time it'll loop through it. So you can think of this bracket, you can think of this syntax here as like a loop, like my cursor's going in a loop. It's going to go, whatever is block of code it's going to be in here, it's going to execute it so many times, right? Now, we haven't seen declaring a variable inside of parentheses, and that is, I believe this is kind of unique to for loops. So what's happening here is you're saying that I, and I is a general naming convention, and it means iterate. And iterate means to go through. So like when you iterate through numbers, like you say 0 through 10, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have iterated through 0 through 10. So iteration is a word you'll hear a lot in JavaScript and computer science, and you're iterating through something. And it means it's going through all of its components. And I'll show you that with an array. So we're setting I to be 0, and we have an I is less than 10, and then I, and each time we pass through this loop, we're going to add 1, or we're going to add the integer 1 to it. So let's say that for the first pass, I is 0, so 0 comes in here, 0 is less than 10, and this loop will only work when this condition, this is a condition right here, it says I is less than 10. So long as I is less than 10, this loop is going to keep looping around. And when it gets to 10, it's going to stop. Now this will be a little confusing at first, but you get used to it. And that's why I've been using 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, because in computer science, the first number isn't 1, it's 0. I'll put a comment, I'll comment up here to help us keep a track of what's going on. So when we start iterating, when we start looping through this for loop, this let I 0 part is only going to do one time. It's only going to happen the first time we run this loop when it starts. After that, it's not going to hit this parameter right here. So the first time we go through it, I is going to be 0, right? I equals 0 the first time. So we come here, 0, and we're doing this conditional, right? So we'll come here and we'll say 0. Let me put a comment there so it doesn't freak out. So 0 is less than 10. Okay, well, it meets the condition. And when this condition doesn't work anymore, when I is greater than 10, this thing is going to stop, all right? So 0, and so what I++ is going to do, it's going to take 0 and then add 1. That's what this plus does. So now I is equal to 1. So we'll come up here in our comments, and then for the next iteration, I is equal to 1. So now we'll come in here. Remember, after the first time, it's going to skip this and just ignore it. So now I is 1. And then we're going to come in here, and we're going to say 1 plus 1. Well, now I is going to be 2. I is equal to 2. Now for the next iteration, all right? So come in here, I is now 2, and then we're going to do 2 plus 1. Well, now I is equal to 3. And then you kind of see how the pattern is starting to loop through. So, we're going to do 3 is I, and it's still less than 10. And then 3 plus 1 is 4. So I is now 4. And then we're going to go through all of this, right? So what happens when I is equal to 9? Okay, so we come in here and we get 9, and we got 9 here, 9 plus 1. Remember, we're adding here 1. So now I is equal to 10. Okay, so we're almost done, right? We're almost finished. So now we're going to put into this condition 10. All right, so is 10 less than 10? No, it's not. So it's going to terminate the loop. It's going to stop the loop. And so when we print this out, you'll see that when we iterate through this thing, when we loop this particular example, we are going to go from 0 through 9. It will not include 10 because the condition here is not met, and this terminates. This is inbuilt to the for loop, so you don't have to worry about it. it'll terminate the loop. Okay, so let's go ahead and do something really simple. We'll do console.log, and what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and use the I here, right? And we'll go ahead and copy that. We'll paste I in here, Control S to save, and we'll come to our page, and we need to open our developer tools, F12. And that's left over from yesterday. I'll hit refresh. So here we go. We got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and it stops at 9. So I walked you through this loop up here with this example so you would understand what is happening here, right? Now you're allowed to come in here and change your value, right? You can come in here and say 100. Okay, let's see what happens when we change I to 100. We'll come in here, we'll hit refresh, and you can see here we got 0 through 99. That's cool. This is going to be so awesome for you in your career. So let's go back to 10. Now what happens if we change our let I to 5? Okay, let me go ahead and delete that. So now we're saying I starts at 5. Okay, well, let's see what happens. Come back to our page, we'll hit refresh. So we start at 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Well, that's really, really cool. Alrighty, so we've got the baseline understanding of doing a for loop. So now I want to add the second half of the dynamic duo, and that's a thing called an array. And how can I describe an array? Well, let's start with what we did a few days ago, right? Let's go with let char underscore 00 equals big H. And let's go ahead and just copy this for quickness sake. And then let's go char01 HELLO, and we're going to do this. Zero, 1, 2, 3, 4. Alrighty. So we have char 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, HELLO, and you remember how we did that JavaScript template strings. Remember that? And we use the interpolation technique with the $ and curly braces. So let's go ahead and copy this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, well, I know I'm going fast, but you can pause the video and follow along with me. But so basically, I'm going to paste all these in here, and char 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So basically, we're concatenating all these together, right? And if everything worked, let's come to our web page, refresh. Oop, console is not a function. What? Oh, well, sorry about that. I've only had my first cup of coffee, so I'm not banging on all cylinders yet. All right, so we have hello, right? And so we concatenated all these together. And, well, you can do it this way. There's nothing wrong with that, but we can use something called an array to do this a lot more efficiently with using for loops. So let's go ahead and comment that out. Let me move this out of the way. All right. So the way that you set up an array is you use let, and we'll just say char array equals to, and then you hit the square brackets. And when JavaScript sees these square brackets, it's going to say, hey, this thing here, this statement is going to be an array. And so what we'll do is we'll come up here and we'll copy the H, and we want to copy both the H and the quotations because we're going to be using a string, or in computer science terms, a character. That's why I use char, even though JavaScript, this is a string. And then we'll come in here, we'll do a comma, and you need to separate each one of your letters with a comma. And we'll go ahead and hit that, and we'll put the O at the end. Okay, so you can see this char array, right? And we have all our characters in here, our letters, right? So one of the things that you'll need to know about with the array is a thing called index. An index, you may have noticed that I've been doing all these numbers starting with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, in computer science, we always start with 0 for numbers. And especially with the arrays, their positions always start with 0. And then the next position is 1, the next position is 2, the next position is 3, not 4, 3, and 4. So the way that indexes work is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so this will be more efficient than having all this code. We can refer to all these characters in the array, and we can call them, we can access them by getting the index of the array. And that's a cool term to know. Index of the array. Well, let's learn how we do that. So the way you do that is with a certain type of syntax, and you'll say char array, right? And then you put the square brackets here right after the object, or the variable, the object, because this variable is an object of an array, right? This is an object. So what you want to do is you want to access the first index, right? So that's 0. And if you want to access this letter O over here, it'll be index of 4. Okay, so let's demonstrate that. Let me go ahead and type in the 0, and you just can't do this. You need to tell it to console log. So we'll do console.log parentheses terminating colon, and we'll just copy this, Control X, Control V to paste. So if everything works right, we should get the letter H. All right, we'll come back to our page, we'll refresh, and here we go. On line 32, we have H, which corresponds to line 32, which is char array index of 0, and up here it corresponds to H. So let's go ahead and console this out, and we'll do 1, copy, let's do it the fast way. 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so we're going to console log index char array 1 here, index 2 here, which is L, 3 here, and then 4, index of 4 is the O. Control S to save, come back to our console, hit refresh, and we have H-E-L-L-O. Hello. Okay, instead of, logging these things one by one, what we can do is we can be smart about our code. So what we can do, let me go ahead and comment that out, is we can use the array, and we can use it with the loop, right? So we want to console log like we did up here, right? We want to console log all the letters of this. We want to console log each index or each letter of the array, right? So we want to start at position 0, right? This is 0 here, and then we want to go to 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. Let me go ahead and put index, and I'm going to go ahead and back this up. So this will give a good representation of what's going on. So we got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So we need to start at the first index at 0. So we need to come here and hit I is 0. And, well, 10. Well, we don't have 10. We don't have 10. We don't have an index of 10. We don't have 10 things in the array. So in JavaScript, we have this property. I haven't used the term property yet, and this will be a good introduction. We have this property called length. And length, when you see that, it will get the length of, in this case, it'll get the length of the char array. And length doesn't mean how long it is in pixels. Length means how many indexes there are, how many positions there are in the array. So the way you do that is you need to reference the variable or the object, and you'll say char array dot and start typing LENGTH, and you'll see length will start pop up here. Char dot array length. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, let's go ahead and let's console that out so we can see what's actually going on. Console.log. Let's go ahead and cut and paste that there, and let's see what happens. So we're going to get the length, how many indexes there are, how many letters are in this array, how many characters, right? So we'll come in here, and we'll see up here on line 41 it says 5. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5 letters long. Okay? So cool. Now, how can we spit all this out? Well, we can go ahead and copy this, right? We can copy here because this is 5, and we have 5 characters in here. Now, if you remember from our example up here, that, even though we had 10, it's only going to go through 9 because of the condition. So it's going to be 1 less than 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's why we start with 0. So when it iterates through, it'll be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then when it hits 5, it'll terminate. So let's go ahead and copy this. And I'm showing you something ahead of time that you don't want to do, and I'll explain here in a minute. So I'll paste that here, and you remember char.length is 5. Okay? So let's go ahead and Control S to save, and I just want to do the numbers real quick, right? So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this 0 is going to correspond to here. This 1 is going to correspond to E, 2 and 3, 2 and 3, and then 4 will correspond to the last index, 4. And then since this length was 5, remember it was 5 when we console logged it, this thing's going to break and it's going to say, hey, my conditions aren't met, right? Okay, so how are we going to access, how can we spit out on the console each letter? Well, the same way up here. Remember up here how we used the char array 0, 0, and then 1 and 2 to access each letter, right? Well, that's the beauty and why loops are so powerful, because we're saying I is going to be 0 as it loops through the first time. I is going to be 1. I is going to be 2. I is going to be 3. I is going to be 4. So basically you can think of, we're going to use this for loop to iterate through the char array. And we're going to use this syntax, but instead of using 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to come in here. We'll paste, we'll come in here and we'll replace the I, and with the char array, and we're going to put I inside of the square braces here. So what's going to happen is as this thing loops through, the numbers, this I is being represented here, right, as 0. So the first loop is going to be, it's really going to be 0. And then it's going to go, remember we talked about the I++ as it iterates. The next pass will be 1. The next pass will be 2. The next pass will be 3. And the next pass will be 4. And so we come back up to our array up here, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we don't have to manually type each time. We can just use I as it iterates through each time. Okay? So let's go ahead and hit Control S to save, and let's see what happens. All right? Okay, so we get H-E-L-L-O. Now you're going to freak out a little bit and see this L and it says 2. It's just saying that this occurred 2 times instead of making it go again and again. And you can see here on the right, this console is executing on JavaScript global scripts JS line 47. Now let me go ahead and just change this to something else. Just change it to P, and just to show you that it's working. H-E-L-P-O. H-E-L-P-O, right? So there you go. So I mentioned before this char dot length. That is, you'll see this used often. You'll see in code that you're going to be referring to the array or whatever other object, that length that they're using. But the thing is, this is it'll kind of drag on your performance a little bit, because what is happening is every time this thing iterates through the loop, it has to come in here and it has to do the comparison, right? Well, JavaScript needs to come in here and then it needs to get the length. And it has to come in here and do it again, find the object, the array, do the length, and then do it again and again and again. So this is not, you can do this, but it's not efficient. And so, and to make it better and to make it more efficient, is you want to declare another variable that will set to the length. And you can just say char array length equals to the length. And you can see the naming convention that I'm using, right? And so you can see how I'm sticking with a understandable naming convention, because this variable is going to be equal to the length. So let's go ahead and copy that, and then we'll paste it here. So we've replaced it. We're not, every time that we go through this loop, every time that we iterate through this loop, we're not having to, JavaScript is not having to do this. It's just, you declare it one time up here and it's one and done. And so you just pass the length here at one time, right? So it's not doing this over and over and over again. Let's go ahead and hit Control S to save, and again, it works. So this is the more efficient and more resource conservative way to iterate through a loop. Well, we're consoling log all of our letters to each line. Well, what happens if we actually want to make a real word? Let's go ahead and say let. One of the terms that I use is append, because I'll introduce you to this thing called appending. Let appended string equal to, and we'll just leave it to nothing right now, or to a blank space. And so right here, I'm going to get rid of this white space and show you that if you don't do it with the white space, you're going to get a problem. So just bear with me, and this is for learning purposes. What we'll do is we'll append each of these letters to this string, this appended string. And the way that we do that is with a syntax called plus equals. And when you see this is something called an operator. And when I was talking up here about this plus plus, that's an operator. That's one of the operators that's inbuilt to JavaScript. So instead of saying I plus 1, because that's a common thing in computer science, this is the shorthand for it. And when you get into programming more, you'll understand and get used to what this means. But plus equals means, in this case, when we're using strings and characters and stuff, that means to append, right? We're going to append this character or this string, we're going to append this character to this string variable. So let's go ahead, and since we've declared it up here, it's a global scope, so the for loop will have access to this append string because it's a global scoped variable. So come in here and paste it down here, and then we'll say append string plus equals, and then we are going to use the char array in I, like we did before. And like before, when we came up here and we console logged HELPO and HELLO, well, we're going to, each pass through of the loop, we're going to stick the H to here, and then the E to here, L to here, L here, O here. Okay? So what happens if we do this, like it is right now? Okay, come here, hit refresh. Well, we don't get anything. Well, the thing is, this appending, you're just appending here, right? We're just appending it here. We haven't console it logged out. So what you want to do is you want to come after the for loop, and you want to come here and hit console.log appended string. Go ahead and copy that, paste it here, Control S to save, and we're on line 50. Come back here, refresh, up, and we have undefined 50. Well, why did that happen? Well, in this case, you actually have to declare, you have to explicitly declare append string in this case. All right, come here, hit refresh. Now we get hello. And this is one of those things that you're going to have to learn about with the behavior of JavaScript. Is sometimes you can just not declare it with, you can sometimes just declare the variable, but it'll break. But in this case with for loops, and I think it has to do with it being a string, so in this case you need to say, you have to explicitly declare that append string is a string, just to let JavaScript know. And that's just one of the quirks with JavaScript, right? So what happens for funsies, let's copy that and paste it here. Now what's cool is we can see this thing in action building out the string. Let me go up here and change it out. And I don't know what, and let's do Harpo. It's an old Groucho, it's an old Marx Brothers reference, but you're probably too young to know what I'm talking about. So let's come up here, we'll hit refresh. And you can see, like here, let's start at line 50, right? Harpo, that's what we're going to, that's the completed or the appended string, right? Harpo, line 50. And you can see on line 46, you can see with each iteration, H, A, R, P, O, Harpo. And so that's a good way to understand how this thing will, how this loop takes each letter and each index of the array and builds the, it builds out the appended string. Well, that's pretty cool. In this example, we learned how to build a string, how to concatenate together a string using an array. Okay, so let's do another example, but this time let's do something mathematical. Let's go ahead and clean up some code here. And I'm going to go ahead and comment that out. And then let's move the index down here. And so let's do something mathematical. All right. So let's say you run a business or something and you want to add up a bunch of numbers, right? Because you want to find out how much money you made. So let's go ahead and say, let array sales equals, and then let's just go ahead and work with some numbers, right? So let's say you made a sale of $19.89. Let's say you made another sale of $20.45. Let's say you made a good sale of $100 even. No. Why am I flubbing up? Okay, and let's say you made another sale of $45.65. All right. So these are all our numbers that we have made from our sales. 19, 22, okay, and we'll just run with 4 sales for the day. So like we did before, we want to go ahead and create a variable to represent our length. So we'll say let array sales length, not lengther, length equals array sales. You can see it here, array sales dot length. I don't know why. My microphone's in the way of the keyboard. So, okay. So remember, our length is 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to have 4 sales, right? So the length will be 4. And you remember our actual indexes are 0, 1, 2, and 3. And we'll use the sales length array, and then we'll pass it in here. So our length is going to be 4, and this will be 4. This is represented as 4. So let's come in here, and for fun, let's console log, and we will replace the char array like we had up here, but we're going to be using this array, and we'll paste it here. Control S to save. Let's tighten up the code, and be console log 48 should be, come here, refresh. So 1989, 20, 45, 100, and then 0.65. And you'll notice that it didn't recognize these 0 zeros. And this is another thing you're going to have to deal with and remember about JavaScript and its nuances with numbers. And I don't want to go over it here, but if you want these places, you're going to use a method to explicitly say, hey, I want you to go to this many significant places. But I don't want to do that right now, so I'll just do 110. We'll come back here. And it's just going to cut the 0. It's always going to get rid of that least common well, it is at least significant digit, and 0 is not a significant digit. So now we go. There we go. $100.12. So what happens if we want to sum all these together? Well, like in the pen string, we'll just go ahead and we'll add, and we'll say let total sales, and we'll just go ahead and see what happens if we don't explicitly set it to something, right? So what we'll do is we'll take total sales like we did before, comment it out, comment this console log out. We'll say total sales plus array sales I. So as this thing loops through, it's going to grab 1989, total sales plus 1989, and then it's going to keep this in memory as 1989. And then it's going to loop and add 1989 to 2045. And then it's going to come here a third time and add it again and again and again. And so let's come down here, console.log, and we'll come here and let's see what happens. Total sales, and let's see if it breaks or it works. And refresh. It's undefined. And again, so in this case, we need to declare it as 0. All right, Control S to save, refresh. Okay, so why didn't it work? Well, the thing is, you just can't do it like that. Every time you loop through, you have to say total sales, the previous total sales, like I said, it puts it in memory. Well, you have to say total sales is equal to the previous thing before plus the new, right? So what's happening is it'll go in here, total sales is 0, right? It's not anything. So it doesn't know here, right here in this case, it'll be 0. And then the first iteration is going to be 1989. So total sales is going to be 0 plus 1989, right? So when you come back in here, the next iteration, it's going to say total sales is 1989 plus 2045, okay? And it's going to loop through here and do this again and again. So let's go ahead and hit Control S to save. And then now, all of this together is $186.11. So let's go back up here and let's not explicitly declare it equal to 0 and see what happens. Okay? Not a known number. And again, this is one of those cases and nuances you're going to have to learn about JavaScript is you have to, in this case, you have to declare the data type to make it work. All right? Well, this has been a pretty good tutorial, and I think this is a good introduction of how to use the dynamic duo of arrays and loops. Well, I need to go get some breakfast and another cup of coffee, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye-bye.